Hey folks, how you doing? I hope the sun shined wherever you are. If it didn't shine on the outside of it, I hope it's shining on the inside. My name is Sam Pearson II. If you've never heard of me, I have no idea who I am. Chief Visionary here, looking to have a great, powerful, but quick and brief conversation about navigating conflict and difficult discussions during this election season. And obviously, I have my featured guests, my featured speakers for the Conflict Summit. And without further ado, I'm not really about all the dramatics, but I work with the best of the best here, folks. So, starting at Conflict Consultant, founder of Conflict Consulting, conflicttraumaconsulting.com, please welcome Cynthia Padilla Pearson. All right, now also moving on to mindfulness expert, one of the best in the business, and yoga savants. Please welcome Danielle Brunson. And I must continue right now because, as I told you all before, there's a doctor in the house. I'd like to welcome you all. To you all, friend of mine and now a friend of yours, Dr. Chatelle Francis. What's going on? Again, folks, I'm not much about the dramatics. I don't even know what that was all about. But here we are. How's everyone doing? Everyone doing all right?
Good.
Yeah, good.
Good. No, that I'm not sold on that. I'm not sold.
We're trying.
I'm trying. I'm not. Yeah. Is it too late? Is it a stressful time for anyone right now?
It's been a long 2 days.
Yeah. You know what? Let's hop right into that long 2 days. I would like to do that. So for each of you, what has the last 2 days been like? And if you're watching this, you have no idea what we're talking about, or it's a long time from now and you're watching this or listening somewhere. It's election season, and more specifically, the last few days have been the election day in general. So however you all would like to start, what have the last 2 days been like for you all?
I think we're all facing a little bit of like election fatigue right now. Maybe that's why we're like, hey, because the past 2 days it's been nonstop. News, uncertainty, and a lot of ups and downs. So depending on, where you're leaning, you might go to sleep and you're feeling like, yay, and then you wake up and you're like, oh no. So it's very emotional for, I think, people in the United States right now, because this feels like legitimately a very important election. They say that every election, the most important election of your life, but this one, it's hitting home for real.
Understood. And Chatelle, how about you?
So I'm from the Virgin Islands. So hurricane references are like our thing. And out of the mouth of babes. So I have a little cousin who said it's like waiting for a hurricane that hasn't hit. And that's exactly what it feels like. You're preparing, you're inundated, and no matter what side of the fence you're falling on, you're still just waiting. So it's just a country with bated breath constantly, no matter what side you're on. And it's exhausting. It's definitely emotionally exhausting, not knowing what the next step is going to be.
Understood. And Cynthia?
I agree. And it's not just these past 2 days. It's been the days leading up to the election. It's preparing ourselves to vote, preparing our friends and family to vote, and the planning and the strategizing, just all of it all together summed up into maybe just a couple of hours. It's a lot to grapple with. And I think, like Danielle said, it is the fatigue. We're literally exhausted from all the work. So I think we're ready for a vacation.
Right, from which we understand they say that should happen in the next couple days. Tonight would be great. However, who knows what the next couple days may bring. So, what I do see happening, and you all may see some of the same, is obviously quite a bit of conflict, whether it be in personal lives, certainly at work, and on social media. There's a lot of discussion going back and forth. So, I'd like to start with, Cynthia right now. How can one communicate clearly in a healthy way during these election times, especially when one might hear something that they don't agree with?
Well, I'll say it's like a 2-part answer to your question. So one is to start to think about the relationship between the other person that you're hearing this content from. Is it a relationship that you want to preserve? Is it a relationship that you want to or be okay with leaving, right? So that's probably the first strategy. And then secondly, is to start to think about what is the actual point that you want to get across to the other person. And I mean to say that to say excluding the emotional driven desire to come off with a heartfelt response, because I think that's like a natural tendency is for us to be really heartfelt because we want to be honest and want to give our true feelings. But sometimes that doesn't really work when you're trying to tell somebody about an opinion on a particular issue that they're also emotionally attached to. So it's helpful to think about where do you see your relationship with this person? And then lastly, to then start to think about what are the things that I really need to convey that don't speak to emotion that could probably help this person either understand where you're coming from or maybe even change their opinion about what they've already had thought of for that particular topic.
Understood. And Chantel, what do you have to add to that, Dr. Francis? What's your thought about navigating these difficult conversations in person, virtually?
So it's definitely about knowing the relationship for sure, but also knowing when to just turn it off, walk away. I know, I'll speak from personal experience. I know I get very passionate and I start to speak with my hands and the neck starts rolling. And then people automatically think, oh, she's getting an attitude. And sometimes that's not what it is. But there's kind of like a proverb in the Caribbean where empty barrels make the most noise. So there's the message and the delivery. Even if my message is straight facts, I can back it up with great peer-reviewed articles. If my delivery sounds like an empty barrel, it sounds like there's no intellect, there's no substance behind it, and the other person shuts down. And then the conflict starts, right? So we're trying to stay away from that. So knowing when, hey, I'm going to remain passionate about this, but let me stick to the facts without that empty barrel delivery versus when, I'm just going to walk away because one, the relationship really doesn't matter to me. Or two, it's just the boundaries. Sometimes this isn't a relationship I should be having these political discussions in. And I think social media blurs those lines so much that we have to be careful who we're just discussing these things with.
Understood. And Danielle, have there been some practices that you've had to use over the last couple of days, being obviously an expert in the field of mindfulness and yoga, where you've had to be like, okay, I need to practice my best things that I've ever preached before. And what can some folks watching right now, what can they do?
Yeah, I really, I've definitely been using meditation and mindfulness a lot the past 2 days and advising people to know when it's time to step away. Sometimes we feel like turning the TV off and not being invested for a little while and taking times for ourselves means we don't care, but that's not true. We do care, but there's points where we have to take a break and consider our own mental health. And I really loved what Cynthia said about, do I want to preserve the relationship? And I think a lot of times we recognize that we don't. But when we do, there's a 3-step process I really like to ask people to apply when they're emotionally triggered. So political discussions, or maybe a discussion with a family member, a colleague around something that isn't politics, you can use this method for anything. And it's just to pause and breathe. That's a very big tip for mindfulness, just to check in, do a couple of deep breaths, and then to kind of acknowledge and witness what you're thinking. Because a lot of times when we're emotionally triggered for political reasons or whatever reason there might be, we create these stories and these ideas that are really tied up in our own perception. So just pausing, breathing, and looking at the situation and recognizing the fact that, hey, maybe I'm coming up with a narrative that might not be true. And it might be true, but taking that moment to notice that and then accepting your emotions and saying, you know what, I'm angry. I'm mad at this person that they said it. And that's okay as well. I think really accepting the fact that anger, sadness, all of these things are normal is really important. And then either saying, okay, I calmed myself down with these 3 steps, or I didn't, and being like, I want to preserve this relationship. Cynthia, maybe we could talk about this in a couple of hours. I'm not in a space to have this conversation. And then remembering to come back. A lot of times when we step away from a conflict for that space, because we've recognized that we need it, we don't revisit. So knowing it's time to come back. So that's really what I've been telling people. If you find yourself in these situations, follow these 3 things, see what you can do to hopefully feel a little bit better, and put yourself first. Take a break when you need it.
Right. So I'd like to add this also, or let's say this question, because it's certainly, I've seen posts about, hey, it's okay if we think different things, we can still be friends. I've seen other people post like, yeah, we could be friends if it wasn't about this, right? So is it okay to sever relationships, right? When it comes to something that's important, or in these moments of conflict, or whether it be the election or other things, is it okay? Is the election like any other conflict that might happen in a relationship that would cause it to dissolve? What's your thought? I know that sometimes personally and professionally, they may be at odds, but what does it mean? And is that okay? Is one justified in leaving a relationship that, where these differences happen?
Well, I would say that there's we certainly need to put ourselves first. And I think that sometimes we get caught up in what we believe someone is supposed to be, or what we thought that person was going to be in terms of our expectations, and they don't match, and that's okay. And I think that it's perfectly okay to decide that there are some things that are just deal breakers. We think of those, deal breakers when we think about jobs, and we think about other scenarios that may not have like an emotional connection per se, or like in the traditional sense. But then we don't necessarily think about those same deal breakers when it comes to relationships. And maybe politics is one of those. But I think it's really important to start thinking about what is important for yourself first, irrespective of what other people are telling you should be important. Because at the end of the day, you have to reconcile these emotions and those decisions, not anyone else. So if that is something that you just cannot, adjust, or you cannot work around, then you sit in that, and then you tell people that. Because if you don't tell them that, then you're sort of in this hurricane of emotions and consequences to not being honest about what are those deal breakers, so to speak.
Very interesting you mention that point, because in any relationship, people discuss deal breakers, whether it's in work and obviously romantic relationships. But somehow it's like politics is that one thing where they're like, no, that shouldn't be a deal breaker, which I find that interesting in the entire spectrum of what deal breakers do exist. So I wonder where that comes from. And so, Chantel, what's your thought about, let's say, it being a deal breaker in, dissolved relationships?
So I think everything Cynthia said, one, is completely true. But I think sometimes we think of relationships as being completely black and white. Either we're best friends or we're enemies. And there are people who I've seen post things and I'm like, oh no, this is it. This relationship is done. Like, I cannot have a rational conversation with this person. Whereas other people have posted things based on their experiences, just what they've been exposed to, and they haven't been exposed to anything else. So is that relationship a relationship that I'm willing to take basically a leap of faith and say, hey, let me show you what my experience is. Let me open your worldview a little bit and see if maybe exposing you to something else will help not really change your worldview, but color it a little bit. Let's fill in some of those lines with that gray area. If those are individuals that I can talk to, be rational with, then I absolutely will keep that person as a friend, because I feel like I can still have an open dialogue with that person because I understand their experiences, they understand mine. But there are others I'm like, oh no, this is it. My mental health has reached its point and this is cutting off right now. Without an explanation, I don't feel like I owe you anything. You didn't feel like you owed me something before you made that status about, for example, domestic violence or Title IX, things that really changed under the current administration, that affected my job, that affected the clients I work with, that were deal breakers for me. So, again, evaluating how much that relationship means to you, whether that person will be able to have a rational conversation with you and you'll be able to kind of put your point across, but then also recognizing and checking in with yourself about your own mental health, is this person emotionally draining for you? Because like Cynthia and you even mentioned, Stan, we do it with every other relationship. We should be able to do it, when it comes to political affiliations as well.
Well, excellent. And Danielle? Any collective thoughts regarding that piece?
Yeah, I agree with what everybody said, 100%. I think that what's really important is that, I feel like I know conflict resolution skills, and those are things that we all teach, and we talk about a lot. And when I apply these great communication skills that I feel like I've acquired through a lot of training and collaboration work, personal work, and work with others, and then I apply conflict resolutions, solutions that I've learned from Cynthia and other experts, and it's still not going anywhere. I agree. It's time to say my mental health and my well-being is okay, and I think learning to set boundaries is really important, and something that a lot of people don't have that ability to say no and set those boundaries, especially with family members. I've seen that a lot during this election. I personally have lost contact with really close family members over election stuff that I tried very hard. It became one of those triggers we were just talking about. And I'm like, hey, for my own personal mental health, I have to step away from this relationship. And I think that that's okay. But I really loved what everyone shared about trying first. But yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong. There's a lot going on. There's some serious triggers happening. And if you need to end a relationship because of politics during this climate, it's very understandable.
What about those that say, God, you're so closed-minded. Why would you end over a vote? Like, it's not important. It's just who I voted for, because you will hear that as well. Any of you, any of the three of y'all can answer this. What do you say to those folks that, let's say, have a little tolerance to someone that's like, no, like, it doesn't make sense?
I would think those people probably haven't experienced some of the trauma that people are experiencing right now, because there's no way that you could feel that way when there's so much going on with, especially the racial injustice component. So a lot of us people feel like the vote is voting for racism at this point. And I think that's really obvious. That's really clear in the news. So when someone says to me, it's just a vote, I'm like, yeah, but that's like a vote against equality for people that I love in my family, for my children. And it's a lot more than just a vote. It's not, a budget for roads. It's not something small like that. It's about treating people with empathy, which is something you learn through meditation and mindfulness as well. Just being empathetic to people who aren't like you.
And I've been having a lot of conversations just about privilege. Being able to say, oh, it's just a vote is a position of privilege that many of us will never see in our lifetime. We just do not have the opportunities to obtain that privilege. So having that conversation about privilege and taking it back to facts. If nothing else you listen to the facts. This has actually happened. I can, again, these peer-reviewed articles, I can bring these up for you so that you can see other people are affected by these decisions. It's more than just a vote. It is literally people's lives on the line.
And Cynthia, anything to add?
Honestly, I just want to put a bunch of exclamation points behind everything that Chatelle and Danielle said. It is about empathy. It is about talking about the facts and showing people where to go to learn. Sometimes we don't have the capacity to teach others, but we can at least tell them where to go to learn for themselves. But yes, it's like this comment about the vote sounds so mechanical. And I think that people have to, or we can remind people that it's not just this mechanism of just checking a box or now, typing a box or even, hitting a button. It is more symbolic than just that it is about these issues, that the potential consequences of some decisions, even in the superior court, what cases can be looked at now that are going to affect us or affect people that you love or that you care for, so all those things. So taking out the mechanics of a vote to looking at the human side of what's happening.
Great point. It's one of those things that in any other time, maybe in any other election, you'd be able to be more transactional, if you will. But given the gravity of how everything seems, it's like people, why take it personal? It's like, well, if there were any election in our recent lifetime or history that's been personal, it's been this one. So amazing discussion and dialogue from our featured guests, featured speakers for the Conflict Summit. And I hope that you all will visit theconflictsummit.com So you could see more of us on November 14th and learn even more about how to navigate trauma and the resulting trauma as well. And, there are some articles researched and the word research mentioned and real life stuff, not SVU people. Yeah, I know a lot of folks will watch TV, but don't understand, no, this is real life. Olivia's living. That's real life in these streets. And there are folks that work with people who deal with extreme conflict and trauma daily basis. And the folks, my featured guests, have thousands of hours of working with people who are not just dealing with trauma and regular conflict, but are affected by things that happen throughout this administration and beyond. So it'd be important to talk to people that really know what they're talking about and not just coming from a place of opinion or even a place of privilege, but places of purpose, understanding. And I know the word empathy was used a couple times, so I really, truly appreciate that word. And it would make sense for all of us to do our best to choose, empathy over ego. Any final words from anyone that I can get? Cynthia, any final words as we move on as it relates to, again, navigating conflict and difficult conversations during the election time?
Final word is to take a break. Take a break, make some brownies, cook, some lasagna, whatever you got to do. Take a break and take care of yourselves.
Awesome. Thank you so very much, Cynthia, for being here. All right. And Chatelle, any final words from you?
Exercise boundaries with yourself and others. Know when to tell yourself no, but also know when to tell others no, whether it be on social media or on your phone. You're in control of your life. So set your boundaries.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you so very much, Dr. Francis. Danielle, any final words from you?
I'm going to echo what Cynthia said. I definitely think we need to know it's time to unplug, turn the news cycle off, and just check in with yourself periodically through some mindfulness. Make sure you're doing okay and give yourself what you need. Doesn't mean that you don't care. It just means that you're putting your mental health as a priority.
Thank you so very much. Mental health as your priority. Thank you so very much, Danielle. See you in a little bit. Folks, thank you all so very much. Now, remember that the understanding of people talk about mental health and how important it is, yet we find ourselves in these situations where we're sacrificing our mental health, our emotions, and our well-being. But what better way to have a better understanding, not just about what's going on everywhere else, but what's going on within? Now, again, I invite you all to the Conflict Summit, November 14th. Visit theconflictsummit.com. Again, you'll see it along the ticker right here. Remember, visit theconflictsummit.com to get more information on how, your group, your institution can register for the Conflict Summit and get some devoted time and some Q&A panel time to discuss conflict and how we work through it on a regular basis. Now, my parting words as we discuss how we communicate during these difficult times, especially during the election season, there being so much divisiveness and chaos, if you will. So many people I know claim to or say they have diverse friends, a diverse friend base. They have friends from all over, all shapes, colors, size, sexual orientation, socioeconomic backgrounds. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. But what has become more clear is those very same people aren't always talking to those friends from those different backgrounds. This is my advice to everyone as we move forward and the difficult conversations persist, is ask. If you're so proud of those friends that you have from other places and other backgrounds, then it only makes sense that you would talk to them, that you would ask them questions, not so you can speak, but so that you can listen and learn from situations and circumstances that maybe you have yet to experience. And if you find yourself having discussions with people that seem a little emotional, there's a reason for that. See, you wanted people to understand when you lashed out, when you were upset, heck, when you broke something, you wanted people to understand why you were so upset that you would break something. Well, now people are having moments in time where they feel like maybe their life is at stake, their livelihood is at stake, or the people they know, like, and love are in troubling times and situations. So it only makes sense that emotions might be involved when people feel like they're working for their life, their well-being, and for humanity. Again, if we can do our best to choose empathy over ego, no telling where we might be and what we might learn. Thank you very much for tuning in right now, and make sure you check out theconflictsummit.com. Again, theconflictsummit.com to learn a little bit more about what we'll be shooting you all on November 14th. Remember, 365 1-4 days a year, that you're good, you're great, you're worth it, and that you don't have to be perfect. You just have to work on making a little bit of progress, because effort on fire beats knowledge on ice. My name is Sam Pearson, second year to Here First. Have an incredible evening. Peace.